Hello and welcome to the Munro Method Clancast. I am Jason Munro and this is episode 86. Today we are going to talk about fat. Not the kind that you carry on your body, the kind that you eat. So we call that dietary fat. People often get these two confused, very, very confused, especially when people are looking into the keto diet and being very much misled about, yes, you'll turn yourself into a fat burning machine, but it's not your body fat you're burning, it's the fuel source fat that you're burning. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. Fat can be a very difficult world to get into. It can be very complicated, very difficult to understand. If there is one thing that I do well, it's take complex things and just break them down to an understandable level. We do not need to be getting ridiculous. In fact, most of the people who listen to this podcast do not need to be getting complex about anything. Like there are a million and one things in your life that you should address before you start worrying about the exact sources of your fat. Yes, you might reach a point in life where you've fixed everything else and now you're looking for that next thing, and it's like, right, I am going to make sure that I am getting these fat sources in my diet. But the demographic that I work with, the people that I work with, the things that I work with them on inside the Munro Method, honestly, you have got a million and one things to address before you start even worrying about the exact places that your dietary fat is coming from. So today, the reason that I'm recording this specific episode is that I have been like a broken record inside my community. To me, I'm a broken record. What I mean is, when I'm doing check-ins, I'm bringing up the same thing many times. And when that happens, it just makes for a great talking point because I've explored it many times, I've spoken about it many times, and I've had lots of thoughts around it. So I work with many people who have very high fat intakes, right? Now, there is a bit of a trend. So generally speaking, people who have a significant amount of weight to lose, like not people who are just trying to lose 5 or 10 pounds because they want to drop a dress size, like people who are going to go through life-changing losses, 4, 5, 6 stones type losses. I think I maybe said this in a previous episode. I'm looking back at my list on Spotify. I feel like I've spoke about this recently. Maybe it was within one of these episodes, but when you're at that level of weight, when you have that much weight to lose, it's not because you're just doing a couple of things that are less than ideal, right? You have a wide range of things going on, a lot of different things going on that are adding a lot of calories into your diet on a daily basis, probably on a daily basis, or at least on a weekly basis, maybe across the weekends. Now, when people come to work with me inside the Munro Method, they all come in via the 15-day trial now. On days 5 and 6, or 6 and 7, I get them to track their food, right? So I want you just to carry on eating as you were going to eat this week as per normal, track it for 2 days, and when you come to do your mini check-in with me, when I'm going to set up your nutrition and your goals and things, I want to see those 2 days of tracking. Now, I very rarely get to see what someone's diet looks like, because as soon as you start tracking, as soon as you have that little thing in your mind that says someone is going to be looking at this, you change, right? You change the way that you eat. But it's fine, because that's also super helpful, because people will often change into the version of what they think they should be doing. So they might go completely wacky in one direction. So when I look at those 2 days, I'm not judging them too much, because it's just a 2-day snapshot of what someone's diet looks like. Once we get fully into it and we've got 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks of tracking, then you can get a much clearer picture of how someone's diet is looking. But when I look at these first 2 days of tracking, a lot of the time there are things that will leap off the page at me. And mostly what I'm looking for when I look at those 2 days of tracking is Is this person capable of consuming enough protein? Is this person capable of consuming enough fiber? And then looking for any kind of obvious standouts as to why that person's weight is in the position it's in. So looking for a very high fat intake, looking for a very high sugar intake, and also looking for the other two things, like someone with a low protein diet, low fiber diet. Now, a lot of the time, I'll look at these two screenshots. Someone will have a great protein day one day and a not so great the next day, or very similar with fiber. That's a positive thing because it shows that they can consume enough. They're just not consistent with it. And then you look at the two screenshots and their dietary fat will be very high. And again, that's a great talking point because hopefully you've got the kind of the underlying message of everything that I speak about through these episodes, and the kind of not so secret to long-term fat loss. It is not just about following a list of instructions to make the scales come down. That's not enough. Yes, that helps you lose the weight, but it doesn't teach you anything about how the weight got there in the first place, which doesn't teach you anything about how to make sure it doesn't come back. So everything that I do is about identifying, like, why am I in this position in the first place? I need to know and understand how I got here. Because if I just go follow a list of instructions to make my weight come down, I'm completely ignoring the reason that I am where I am. I'm completely ignoring the source of the situation. So, and this is why I think what I do stands out from 95% of what's out there, because people, plans, programs, coaches, etc., they're very much about selling the results. Like, I've even stopped posting transformation pictures on my Instagram now. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not using other people's results to sell what I do. I'm much more about sharing screenshots and comments and what people are saying rather than specific numbers, how much weight someone's lost. Because I feel like that attracts the wrong type of person. Yes, it might get some of the right people through the door initially, and then you can work on their mindset. But I just don't. I don't want people coming to me because they think I'm going to help them lose X amount in X space of time, because that's just, it's not a great start point to be in. Anyway, so how did I get to that? Coming back to the fat thing, it will come back to me exactly where I was. I can't remember exactly where it was. Oh yeah, we need to understand why we're in the position that we're in, right? It is crucial, not just for the short-term progress, for the long-term progress. So when we get to this point at week 1, and let's talk about what would be considered high. So a high-fat diet is considered once 30% of your calories are coming from fat. So for example, I did someone's check-in today. Let me get my calculator up. I did someone's check-in today, and they were having 1,600 calories per day, but they were having 92 grams of fat per day. On average, by the way. So they're having days over 100. Now, the thing about fat is, and I should probably talk about this. So the thing about fat and why it gets a bad reputation, why it can be a problem, is because it is energy dense. Energy dense just means that it contains more energy than other things per gram. So protein, 1 gram of protein is the equivalent of 4 calories. So 100 grams of protein, you would get 400 calories from it. Carbohydrates are exactly the same. 100 grams of carbohydrates, you would get 400 calories from it. Potentially. Should we dip into that? Just because it contains 400 calories doesn't always mean that's what our body takes from it, but we'll save that for another day. Dietary fat, however, contains more than double that per gram. Okay, a gram of fat, dietary fat, contains 9 calories. So for every 100 grams of fat that you're consuming, you're having 900 calories compared to the 400 in protein, compared to the 400 in carbs. This is why we want to not have a high fat diet. Equally, we don't want to have a chronically low fat diet. Fat is essential to our health, especially in women. It's crucial and essential to female hormonal health. So the way that I can explain this to the people I'm working with is that we're not trying to create a low fat diet. You need fat in your diet. What we do need to do for you specifically is create a lower fat diet, because beyond a level, you only need so much. After that, all you're doing is adding unnecessary calories to your diet very quickly. So, for example, coming back to the person I looked at today, so they were having around 1,600 calories per day. Their average fat was 92 grams, 828 calories. So, in that instance, more than 50% of their calories was coming from fat. Now, whether your fat intake is high or not isn't determined by the number, right? Just because she was having 92 grams of fat, that doesn't mean that our fat intake is high. It's more to do with if a person has 1,600 calories in a day and 92 grams of that comes from fat, that's high, because more than 50% of those calories was coming from dietary fat. If I am working with someone who's exercising a lot and we've got them on 2,500 calories, then 92 grams of fat would only be around 30% of their calories, which would be fine. So it's not whether something high or not is not found in a specific number. It's found in the way that you're balancing your diet. So the reason this is so important to know is that when I see things like this, like when somebody comes and does that first check-in on day 7, I'm calculating their figures, and on one day they've had 70 grams of fat, on the other day they've had 90 grams of fat, but they've only had like 15 and 1,600 calories on each day. Then that's when I can enter the conversation and say, and this is the thing you really need to understand and remember, is that even though you know that I was going to be looking at this, even though you've probably made some changes, what I'm still seeing here is that you have a naturally high fat diet. Now, when I say a naturally high fat diet, all that means is someone has a lot of high fat foods in their kind of rotating menu. So, like, someone's returned to the group recently who was a member a long time ago, and she was having like 110, 120 grams of fat in a day. She is carrying a higher level of body weight, and we had this conversation, and it's similar to the conversation that we had when she was here a few years ago. This is something that's really going to have to change, because like I said, we need to understand where the weights come from. We need to understand why we're in the position that we're in. Why am I, and this is what I touched on in a couple of episodes ago, like, why am I living like an 18 stone version of myself, a 16 stone version of myself, a 19 stone version of myself? Like, that weight has come from somewhere. There is some area of my diet where I am quite drastically over consuming to lead my weight to that level. Now, there are going to be many different things impacting this, right? It's not just going to be the fat in your diet. But I wanted to talk about this today because it will be a factor in many people's diet. Like I said, this person that's consuming 110, 120 grams of fat in a day, way over 1,000 calories per day just from their fat, way more than 50% of their calories. And the thing with it is, like I said, fat is energy dense. Like, go and grate 30 grams of cheese now and look at it, right? It's not a lot. Or even cut a 30-gram block of cheese off of a block of cheese, right? It is not a lot. I mean, I don't even know off the top of my head what the calories are. Let's check, shall we? So 30 grams of cheese, very randomly, just go the first one that came up on Google. 30 grams of cheese contains 100 and... Sorry, where is it? Oh, that's the 100-gram one, sorry. 30 grams of cheese contains 121 calories and around 10 grams of fat. So 121 calories and 10 grams of fat. 10 grams of fat is 90 calories. So the majority of the calories in that piece of cheese is just coming from the fat. It's the reason that a whole block of, let's say you buy a 300-gram block of cheese, it would have about 1,200 calories in it. It does not, when it's a high fat food, just a 300 block of cheese, 1,200 calories in that single block of cheese. You don't get a lot of food for your calories when the foods are very high in fat. So this person that I spoke to recently, she's like, oh, I eat a lot of cooked meats. She eats a lot of bacon for breakfast, sausage for breakfast, link sausages. If you ever look at the fat in link sausages, it'll blow your mind per sausage. Then everything else that she eats in a day. So it's not going to come down to a single food. And this is the important thing to remember. To get to 100 plus grams of fat in a day, you're consuming fat from various different sources. So you might be eating a lot of mayonnaise, a lot of oils in cooking, using a lot of butter, eating cheese, full fat yogurts, eating a lot of chocolate, anything that's kind of high in fat. And I mean, this is another thing. I had a conversation with a friend of mine a while back now, who we've never spoken about dieting. We've never really spoken about nutrition or what I do or anything like that. He's never mentioned his weight or his health, but he brought it up one day and said, I am trying to lose weight and it's not happening. And I don't understand it. And then he started going on about fat because whoever he was listening to on Instagram spoke about healthy fats, and they were banging on about nuts and avocados and olive oil and cheese and all this stuff, eggs. And I was like, okay, well, tell me what you had for breakfast. He's like, well, I had a salmon fillet with, some smoked salmon with 6 scrambled eggs, an avocado, some cheese through the scrambled eggs, cooked it all in olive oil, and he had it with a bagel with butter. So I just whipped out my phone and I went into MyFitnessPal, and I very roughly plugged all that into MyFitnessPal. And I turned round and said, that was a 1,300 calorie breakfast. You had 1,300 calories for your breakfast. I can't remember what it was, like over 100 grams of fat, or around 100 grams of fat, just in the breakfast alone. And he's like, yeah, but it's all healthy fats. I'm like, yeah, that's fine, but combining lots of healthy things together does not equate to more health. You've just had a 1,300 calorie breakfast. What you're going to have for your lunch, what you're going to have for your dinner, what you're going to have for snacks in between, what you're going to have in front of the TV tonight. How many thousands of calories are you going to consume today that's going to be more than you need? So like I said, we need fat. Fat can be healthy, but health is not found in a single food. It's not found in a single nutrient. It's found in, and it's such an annoying word, and it's the word that nobody wants to hear, but it's found within the balance. And that's the thing, right? That's the part that people struggle with. They hear the word balance, they understand what the word balance means, they just don't know how to apply it to themselves. They don't know how to apply it to their diets. They don't know what moderation, they know what the word moderation means, but what does moderation look like? Like, what's moderate? How do I balance this? What's balance? What's moderation? So this is what I work on a lot with the guys that I work with. And the fat intake thing, so like the conversation that I just had like 10 minutes ago when I finished up that check-in was, when I am doing people's check-ins, right, my mind is not just on what you've done this last couple of weeks, right? It's, I'm analyzing the things that the person's saying, I'm looking at their language, I'm looking at the things that they're doing with their diet, and then I'm projecting that 2, 3, 5 years into the future. If I leave this person with this thought, with this belief, will that help them or hinder them 5 years from now? If this person continues consuming this level of fat in 3 to 5 years, will this be helping them or hindering them? So the conversation that we kind of have to have at those times is, this level of fat that you're consuming now, this is where your diet has just landed. It's where you've naturally found yourself. You're having sausages, eggs, and bacon for breakfast. You're having, I don't know, a cheese toasty for lunch, and then you're having a chicken tikka korma. No, that is a thing. You're having a chicken tikka korma for dinner, and you're having 130 grams of fat in a day, and you're having 3,000 calories a day when you only need 2,200. The fastest way to reduce the calories in your diet, and you should only do this if you are consuming a lot of fat, is to reduce the fat in your diet. If you're already consuming a moderate level of fat, right? If 20 to 30% of the calories in your diet is coming from fat, then you're fine. Don't go reducing your fat. You're going to have to reduce somewhere else. You're eating too many carbs somewhere, too many processed carbs probably, because your fat's fine if you're in that 20 to 30% range. But with people who have weight to lose, who are consuming a lot of fat, the first place they want to start looking is the way that they're eating fat. And listen, like I said, it could be that you have lots of healthy fats in your diet. You could be having avocado and whatever and salmon for breakfast. You could be having a walnut salad for lunch. You could be having some kind of oily fish and whatever for dinner. And that, on paper, that sounds great. Look at all this healthy food I'm eating. But more health does not equate to more health. You could be combining. And you know what? I just remembered this. Like, we used to see this a lot with, like, it's not as popular anymore. But there was a period of time, probably 2018, 2019, when I kind of first started doing this. Even into 2020, when it became a bit more popular again. But Joe Wicks, the body coach, his thing that he ran, the 90-day SSS. I've never really knew what SSS stood for. But I had all these people coming in to work with me and, what's your diet history, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I'm a 90-day SSS graduate. And there was this wave of people who had done the body coach thing, got to the end of it. They had been following the recipes, following the meals. I actually did a few stories about this way back when. Actually tallying up the meals and showing like how high the calories were, and it was justified because people, it has a very intense exercise plan. People need to fuel and refuel, so the very intense exercise plan had a high calorie menu to go with it that was very high fat and high carb, which is fine because it matched the level of activity they were doing. But what happens a lot of the time with people who do the body coach is they get to the end of it, and it was great for the 90 days, but the level of exercise they were asked to do was unsustainable, wasn't realistic for them. It couldn't fit around their family life. It was fine when they were super motivated and had an end point of 90 days, but they couldn't keep up with that level of exercise. The problem was, during that 90 days, they had created a menu that was in line with the body coach meal plan or recipe book, whatever it was that went with it. So they stopped doing the exercise, but they kept eating the same. And they kept eating these very high fat, very high carb meals while not doing the exercise to kind of match it anymore. And they very quickly found their weight started going back up the way. And like I say, these meals were all super healthy, well balanced, etc. But more health does not equal more health, right? It was too many calories. The meals were all high fat, high carb, therefore high calorie, and higher calories than the person needed. So it's not about, like I said, it's not about trying to create a chronically low fat diet. It's understanding that you are eating too much fat overall. Like these examples I used, if somebody's having 90 grams of fat on average, they're having days at 100, having days at 110, but they're also having some days at maybe 80, 70. But the thing that I dial in on is the fact that that person can have a day at such a high level of fat. Like if that's a natural thing for you because of the way you combine foods on that day, then what happens if, you go through a little phase of wanting those foods regularly across a week? Your average then starts to go up to 110, 120. You're now consuming 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 calories just from your fat intake. So I think we'll wrap it up there, right? Fat is not the devil. Fat is not the enemy. It's not the bad guy that it's made out to be. However, many people are consuming too much. And the reason that too much is a problem, I didn't really touch on this, right? But like I said, it's energy dense. It contains a lot of calories. And this is where I was going when I mentioned the cheese thing earlier on. You don't get a lot of food for your calories. So let's say someone's trying to work to 1,500 calories, right? If they eat a lot of high fat foods, they are going to get a very low volume of food. So they're going to have if you laid out everything they were eating in a day, it would not amount to much because a lot of the calories came from fat. Fat contains a lot of calories. You don't get many calories for, I mean, what's a good example? 1,500 calories could be 3/4 of a Domino's pizza, or it could be breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, and supper. It just all comes down to mostly the fat intake. Mostly. It is mostly the fat intake. The higher something is in fat, the higher it is in calories, the less food you get for your calories. That's basically how it goes. Think of a high fat diet as being an expensive diet. You have to spend a lot of calories to get very little. So we are not trying to create a chronically low fat diet. We're not trying to go down to 10, 20, 30 grams a day. That's probably low for most people. Equally, a high fat diet will not be found in a specific number. It will be found in how things are balanced between the calories that you're consuming. And that's a numbers game. So if you want to know how to do that, if you are tracking, you can go take a look at your tracking for yesterday, and you can look at what your fat was yesterday. If you had 1,500 calories and you had 90 grams of fat, if that's more than it is more than 30%, we know because we did it earlier. If that's more than 30% of your calories coming from fat, you potentially have a high fat diet. Like, that's just one specific day. It would be better to look at that across a week. And just work on bringing that down. Now, you can do that very easily in NutriCheck. NutriCheck's fantastic. Go into your nutritional summary page, tap on the fat button, tap on the highest button, tap show results, and it will show your top 20 foods that contain fat. So top 20 foods or meals, like the 20, it will show you the top 20 entries that you've made that contain fat. So cheese might come out at the top, mayonnaise might come out at the top, chocolate might come out at the top, fish and chips from the chip shop might come out at the top. If that's a one-off, right, you're not going to change that. You're looking for things that you're having regularly on a daily basis, that are all adding up together, and that's when you can start to make changes. So you can also look for like days where you come, like I spoke about my friend, you could look for days where you're combining a lot of high fat foods or a high fat meals, and you could maybe just say, right, on that day, if I'm going to be having the macaroni cheese for dinner, then I'm probably not going to have the sausage, bacon, and eggs for breakfast. And then whatever you have for lunch, because that's going to be a super high calorie day. You would want to say, well, if I'm going to have the macaroni cheese tonight, we'll do the sausage, bacon, and eggs tomorrow, right? Rather than combining lots of high fat meals on top of each other, that's how you create these really high fat days. And just gradually doing that over time will help you create this kind of lower fat menu. Lower, just to clarify, I'm saying lower, not low, because at the moment, most people probably have a high fat intake. We're just trying to get, and this is the explanation I try to give to people all the time when they talk, when people come to work with me and they'll say things like, I'm eating lots of fruits and veg. And then you'll look at your fiber intake and it's like still only 15 grams. And I'll say, I completely get that this feels like a lot to you, but please know that you are not eating a lot. Like, you're not even yet at the kind of adequate level. You still need to eat more. And it's just a language thing. If that person thinks they're doing a lot of something and a lot isn't even getting them to the minimum level that they need to remove that language, right? They need to understand that it's still not enough. Creating the idea that you're doing a lot of something can potentially be super unhelpful when you're not actually doing a lot of something. It doesn't change the fact that it feels like a lot to the person because it's more than what they're used to having. And we celebrate that, and it's a super positive thing. But from a language perspective, from a mindset perspective, if you create the idea that you're doing a lot of something, you're having to put a lot of effort into it, a lot of work into it, and it's not even getting you to like the minimum level of where you need to be, that can be a tricky thing in the long term. But yeah, when I'm working with people and they'll say like, oh, I'm eating a lot of protein or I'm eating a lot of fiber, and then you kind of look at the numbers and it's like, yeah, you feel like you're doing a lot of that, but just so you know, oh yeah, that was the thing I was saying. They think they've got, I'm following this high protein thing. And I try to explain to them, like, what we do here is not high protein. And then I'll do the calculation and say, high protein for you would be like 180 grams a day. At the moment, you're having 70 grams a day. We're trying to get you to 80. This is just adequate. We do not have a high protein approach here. We have an adequate protein approach. The problem is that most people have low protein diets. And it's the same with fat. And that's why I keep highlighting that. We're not trying to create a low fat diet. We're trying to bring you down from a high level so that you're consuming an adequate amount, just enough. We're just trying to bring some balance to your diet. And at the moment, your calories are higher because you're losing a lot of your calories to too many high fat foods. We just want to scale that down a bit to help you bring more balance to your diet, to help you reduce your calories, which will help you reduce your weight, not just in the short term, but long after we're done working together. Because if having 100 plus grams of fat a day is part of the reason that your weight is 16, 17, 18 stone, wherever it is, then it's not something you can continue with, right? You're not going to get to 11, 12, 13 stone while still doing something that took your weight to that place in the first place. And this is why I'm always talking about living like the goal version of yourself, understanding why you're in the position you're in so you can change those things to not just get to where you want to be, but to be able to stay there, to be able to live there. Right, enough from me. I'm actually on a bit of a roll today. I'm going to dive straight in and record hopefully another 3 episodes before my son's friends come over for a play date. God love the summer holidays. Right, until next time.